FSU stays hot in the transfer portal and lands a coveted edge rusher to complement the best defensive line in the ACC. We're talking about it and breaking it all down for you next. Hey guys, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching the video. Gilber Edmond picked the Noles today, and the best transfer class in the nation got a little bit better. He is a 6'5", 250-pound, long, athletic defensive edge rusher that I think is going to be really, really good for the Noles for at least a couple of years. He had very limited play in 2020 and 2021. As you can see from the video that we're showing, he definitely got after it, and he definitely made some big plays at times against some pretty premier teams. In 2022, however, he had 39 tackles, 9 of them for a loss. He had 2 sacks. He played all 12 games for the Gamecocks. He's a very highly sought-after defensive end, and he visited a couple of SEC schools that Florida State shoved in a locker to pick up his commitment. He visited FSU on January 4th and 5th. He stopped by UF for a few hours and then was on his way to LSU, but ultimately picked the Noles to gain his commitment. This comes after FSU's Jared Verse announced that he was going to come back. And I spoke to some people close to the commitment that said that this surprised them just a little bit. They thought that maybe Verse's decision might have him leaning somewhere else. Edmond maybe wanted to go somewhere where he could be the guy and not the guy that backs up Jared Verse or plays on the opposite side of him. This is huge for a couple of reasons. And I'm going to tell you about those as soon as we get done giving some love to our friends over at Garnet and Gold. We've told you about them before, but you can go to garnetandgold.com and enter code NOSLAW, that's NOSLAW at checkout, and save 15% on the very best when it comes to FSU licensed merch, gear, and athletic apparel. They've got everything you're looking for, from the Columbia shirts to the Nike clothes and everything in between. Go check out garnetandgold.com today. You are shopping for FSU gear, I guarantee it. Make sure that you're saving money with FSU's only remaining locally owned retailer, licensed merch, everything you could be looking for, garnetandgold.com, NOSLAW, NOSLAW at checkout. Here's what's big about this. Gilber Edmond could have gone to UF or LSU and been the guy there. Yet he chose to come to FSU. Why did he do that? Well, I'd have to imagine that development means a ton to him. And I just don't know that the development at UF or LSU is quite the same as what you see at FSU. Florida State's recruiting pitch is pretty obvious, and what they've done the last few years at defensive end has been pretty remarkable, especially consider transfers. You've got guys like Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas and Jared Verse, and there are more that Florida State has really developed into being great defensive ends that are going to make a lot of money playing in the NFL. I don't know if Edmond will do enough in 1 year to get drafted from Florida State, but if not, he has a chance to be the guy following Jared Verse, and I think that's attractive. I think that FSU is able to sell to him, hey, come learn behind Coach Puchis, come learn behind Jared Verse, come play with Pat Payton and some of those wrecking balls on that defensive line, and then come and be the guy in 2024. I think that's a very attractive pitch. I think that's a very attractive sales technique for Florida State, and something that only they can offer. Only Florida State can offer what they've done with transfer defensive ends in the portal, and I think it's pretty special that they were able to get the commitment of Edmond even after Verse decided to come back. This is also really big because you went head-to-head with 2 SEC schools. Again, one of them being your biggest rival. Florida State saw Edmond leave their campus and drive 2 hours to Gainesville and spend time there with Billy Napier and his staff. Edmond then left there to go to LSU, another very competitive place, another place that is highly sought after when people are transferring. Edmond wasn't somebody that wasn't familiar with those SEC lights, having played at South Carolina the last few seasons. For Florida State to go up against 2 of the bigger programs in the SEC, again, one being a massive rival, pretty big win here for Mike Norvell and his staff. FSU's defensive line depth is ridiculous right now, and it is going to be absurd what this defensive line is able to do. We've talked with you guys about Jared Verse. We've talked about Braden Fisk. We've talked about Fabo. We've talked about Daryl Jackson, who has been pulled in. You also add in Derek McClendon, and you add in Pat Payton. Ayo, and different guys on that defensive line. It's going to be the best in the ACC next year, and I think it'll be close to top 10 in the nation, without a doubt. We'll talk more about the defensive line as time goes on and as we get closer to the season, but I think there's another aspect and angle of this that is pretty fun to look at. South Carolina fans have to hate FSU right now, and it's just getting laughable at this point. I don't think there's a big rivalry there or anything. I obviously haven't played them since 2011 when the Greg Reed hit happened on Lattimore, but I do think that South Carolina is getting very, very tired of their best players choosing to go to Florida State. Obviously, you guys know about the guys that have transferred from South Carolina and come here, even this year, getting Jaheim Bell and now Gilber Edmond. There's been accusations of tampering, and there's been questions around what Florida State's doing to get these guys here. But I do like the path that has been laid out with the South Carolina pipeline to Florida State. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to watch their fans on message boards and Twitter, Facebook, and everywhere else melt down every time a commitment happens. I'm enjoying it. Hopefully this can continue as time goes on, but I like the rivalry that's brewing on social media and other places as well. Again, Edmond picks FSU, and he brings a ton to the table. I think he brings a ton of athleticism. At 6'5", 250, he's got great size, and I think is really going to help figure into what makes Jared Verse have a truly special year this year. He's not Jared Verse yet. Can he develop into a player like Jared in a couple of years? I think absolutely, under the development of this staff. But being able to rotate, and I think this is what's so big on the defensive line that we'll go into further in other videos, but being able to rotate Fabo out with a guy like Darrell Jackson, and being able to rotate Verse out with a guy like Gilber Edmond, and not having as steep of a drop-off there is going to be huge for the defensive line. Depth is often considered when guys get hurt or when guys get injured. We think about, okay, who's next up to replace them? But what we don't think about from a depth perspective is where can we save somebody reps and plays? Where can we get an equal or similar replacement level to get somebody on the field that doesn't have Verse playing 700 plays next year or 650 plays next year? That is where I think guys like Edmond come in and can be massive. Edmond is quick off the ball, as you saw in the highlights earlier. He can get into the backfield and absolutely wreak havoc, and I think he's going to do all of that. But where he fits into this rotation is going to be something that sets up this defensive line for success, because you're going to take some of that burden and some of that load off of your superstar, and that's massive. If Edmond can come in and work and be diligent and put his head down and be developed by the staff, he's going to have a very, very good 2023. But his 2024 could set him up to be mentioned with the names like Jermaine Johnson and Jared Verse and the defensive end greats that Florida State has had for years. It's going to be special to watch. Again, massive shout out to FSU's efforts here to get Edmond into this class. Massive shout out to Edmond to understand his role, understand what his place is going to be on this defense next year, and look for what was best for his future. I think he could have gone to Florida or gone to LSU and, again, been the guy. But I think he made the right decision for his ultimate future and his NFL aspirations by picking FSU. Tell us your thoughts down in the comments. Let's chat about this. Let's celebrate this as the Noles pick up another elite defensive end target. Their number one class gets better in the portal. We will talk to you guys soon. We've got more news coming. Go Noles.